Hi there, and welcome to On That If I Want To. This is Andrea Mowry of Andrea Everyday, and I just realized I've got nothing on my lips. I put on lip gloss just for y'all. So, hello, welcome. If this is your first time, this is a little weekly, mostly knitting podcast where I answer your questions about fiber arts. Mostly knitting, as I said, but sometimes a little bit of spinning and just general fiber arts makey chit chat. My lip gloss threw off my concentration here. Today I am wearing my DRK handspun everyday cowl, and I am so tickled. I showed a little sneak peek of this last week, but I'm wearing it today. So I am so happy about it that I actually got Peter to take some proper photos of it when we did our photo shoot for some new patterns this week. It's funny, when I do when I knit previously published patterns of my own, when I knit them again, as I often do, I don't ever really take proper photos with Peter for those. We usually just only do published pattern photos. I am just firing on all cylinders. That's why my coffee's back there. So anyways, it was fun actually taking photos of just some finished objects. We did a couple of them. So I'll share those later this week or next week in my newsletter, maybe on the gram. So I have all kinds of show and tell today. It's actually pure chaos. This is one of those times where it's kind of good. Y'all can't see too much of my studio because it is like chaos in here. I have lots of things drying. I blocked some things last night. I mean, there is literally just sweaters on like every surface. Yarn and fiber exploded everywhere. I am gonna have to spend some time this weekend getting organized because it's kind of starting to stress me out. It's just, okay. But let's focus. Let's have a calming moment. I'm just gonna take a sip of my coffee here. All right, maybe I'll save show and tell for the end, and I'll jump into some questions, and I'll also chat about the new knit along that is starting up pretty quick here. So, all right. Listening to you talk about spinning finally got me hooked, and I recently added dyeing and spinning to my wool-related activities. Of course, I would love to join the Attune shawl knit along with my own handspun, which is what I just hinted about like 2 seconds ago. And working on plying seems a prerequisite for that, for where I am at in my spinning now. So here's my question. What do you do when a single breaks while plying? So if you're plying, I just happen to have a bobbin of, this is my last little bit from, do I not have those up here? Man, I have all kinds of show and tell. Goodness gracious. So this is just my extras from a current sweater spin I'm working on right now. It is very bright. So what this person is asking about is, while you are plying your yarns together, so that's when you take 2 or more singles. So this is my singles. Come on. Focus, where it's just a single strand of yarn that twist has been added to create a single yarn. And now you could either keep it as a singles, or you could combine it with 1 or more strands to this one to create a plied yarn. And I pretty much have only done plied yarn at this point. I don't have a huge drive to spin singles and leave them as singles, but every time I say I'm not super interested in doing something, I swear the next week I am all about it. We'll get into that later too with my new obsession with spindle spinning. So what they're asking about is, when you're plying, if you don't have enough twist in your singles, what will happen is that yarn will break. It'll draft apart, and then you have to do something to get that yarn back into what you are applying. So all I would do, and I mean, you can watch classes on this where they do it probably in a very technical, proper way. I didn't think about answering this question, and maybe I don't do it the proper way, but I literally, when I'm adding, because you also will sometimes just be plying yarn and you'll have one bobbin run out before your other bobbin, but maybe you're doing a sweater's quantity like I am, so you have another bobbin ready to go and you just need to attach your new bobbin. So it doesn't have to just be if it breaks. But what's nice about it is if it does break, like you can see that now this end is fluffy and kind of, the fibers aren't all tight and twisted. So I would just take those and let them be fluffy. And where the break is kind of the same thing. And I just hold it together and let the twist from my plying go in, and it just twists it right in, and you just keep going. That is like the most not great, helpful answer, not technical answer to this question. But really, basically, all I do is hold where the break was in there, and I just let that twist run through, and it grabs it and keeps going. And I've never had a problem with that. As I've been knitting, I've never seen where I've added in a new ply. It's always just worked for me, especially if you're using non-superwash fibers. If you ever did come across a little point where maybe you feel like the end looks a little frayed or something, you could probably even do a little spit splice and kind of felt it in a little bit. Oh, I feel like there's going to be a proper spinner listening to this, just shaking their head like, Andrea, what are you telling this spinner? So any proper, real technical spinners out there, feel free to correct me in the comments below and tell this poor spinner how to do it right. But I really do just kind of hold it in, and the twist goes in, and it all just works real easy. I mean, that's the thing, is that especially wool fibers, they want to come together. It's like they magnetize with each other. They just want to be together. So really just kind of holding it there and letting the twist goes in, it just kind of works. I wish I'd thought this one through before I tried to answer it. But yeah, just try it out. I was actually thinking about this a lot this morning, about how not a technical spinner I am. Like, I find all of the information fascinating, and I think I do enough of it intuitively, but I think it's kind of the way I approach it. It's probably why I became a knitwear designer, where I just kind of want to do things my own way. And I'm not great with the technical side sometimes. I'm like, if it works, it works. And if you like it, great. I know that, I think it's just, we all think about things in different ways, which I think is really fun, because we have different ways that we achieve joy in our making. And so for some of us, it is that technical side. Like, we want it to be scientific and mathematical and like really hone in on those details to perfect it. And then there's others of us that I think are just very intuitive, and we're just like, well, this is just what I do and it works. I don't know why it works, but it works. And I'm just going to keep riding that train. All right. Next question. Another handspun question. As a fairly new spinner, I am struggling with what quantity of fiber I need to buy and spin in order to make full projects. For example, I love your handspun DRK Everyday cowl and Harlow hat that you showcased in episode 117. So that was just the last episode. How much fiber would you recommend spinning for small to medium projects like those? Do you have any tips for stretching a precious 4-ounce bump of hand-dyed fiber as a combo spin? So for something like a hat or socks, I have always had enough yardage by just using 1 4-ounce braid. So I spin and knit for socks quite a bit, and I always have plenty left over. And that Harlow hat, I'm trying to think of how much. I think I used almost all of that, but I also added like 3 inches to the length of that hat because I wanted to do that big wide fold over brim. So I would say 1 braid is great for something like socks or a hat. I would say the next step up for something like a cowl, I would do 2 braids just to ensure you have enough. That being said, I had I think it was only 2 braids for this spin, and I have a skein and a half left over from doing this project. So I almost wonder if you could eke this out with 1 braid, but I don't have those quantities in front of me, so I can't promise that. I would probably do 2 braids just to be safe, and just know you're gonna have leftover to use in another project. And as far as truly figuring out how much you need, again, this is a tough one for me to answer because of that designer brain. I always go the extra route. I would much rather, because a lot of times when I'm starting a new design, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do every time. I'm very much a design on the needles designer. I don't write out the whole pattern and then follow my whole pattern. I write it as I'm knitting it because I like to change my mind, and you never know when inspiration's going to strike mid-project and you come up with some like really cool idea to add in there. So I always err on the side of having a little bit of extra yardage, because especially if you're using something like handspun or indie dyed yarn that maybe you can't get more of, or even if you can get more of it there, it's probably not going to match color wise because it was dyed at separate times. I just don't enjoy that kind of yarn chicken stress. And I know that I can always utilize, if I have that, like I'm so happy that I have a little bit left over from this to use in another project because I loved this colorway so much. So I know I'll use it. That being said, you definitely don't want to always buy a whole bunch of extra fiber or yarn, and a lot of us can't do that if we aren't going to utilize it. So if you want to get much more precise on your fiber or yardage quantities, for fiber specifically for spinning, I'm actually adding 3 links below to different blog posts on how to estimate your fiber usage. You can find so many people have written about this, and they are going to be those really great technical people who are going to give you proper information on really how to figure that out more accurately. So I'm going to link all those below, but a quick internet search, you'll find so many answers to that question. I also think, and this might just be the way my brain works, but I have found that practice is what teaches me all the things. And so I think I'm pretty good at estimating my fiber and yardage usage just because this is my job and I do it all the time. And I have knit so many sweaters and shawls and all these things that I'm pretty good at just being able to judge, even by like the size of the skein and stuff, about if I'm going to have enough and how much I'm going to have left over. But a lot of that has come from years of experience, kind of getting to a point where I can just estimate a little more easily. But definitely if you want to have it be more accurate, check out these articles, look it up yourself. And then also I just want to throw this out here. I've answered this a few times, but it definitely comes up again. As far as yardage, when you are trying to, let's say you're at a festival or a cool yarn shop and you find a yarn you love, but you really don't know what you're going to use it for yet. And you're like, I have no idea how much to buy. That is when I love, oh my gosh, am I going to forget the name of it? Oh, shoot. Hold on. Oh my goodness, y'all. No, that is going to drive me bonkers. Okay, there is an app. I can't believe it's not in my brain right now. Stashbot. Yes. So Stashbot is one of the things that really helped me start estimating my yarn usage, yardage requirement that I might want when buying yarn without a specific project in mind. Because you can put in there gauge and then approximately what you want to make, whether it be socks or a hat or a sweater, and if that sweater is going to be long or cropped or long sleeves, all that stuff. You can toggle different filters to get a good estimation of about how much you're going to need. So Stashbot, I'll add that to the info so that y'all can have a link. Here we go. So this would not be spinning specific, but for those of us, and if you just have handspun yardage in your stash that now you want to use for a project or anything, sometimes that little app is just really handy to give you an idea of where to start, a good jumping off point. The thing that makes these other articles so helpful as well not even just for fiber, but for yarn in general, is one of the things we have to think about is the way a yarn is spun is going to have a big impact on how much yardage you need. If that is a woolen spun yarn full of air, its weight is going to be very different for how much you need for a sweater than a worsted spun yarn that's not full of that air, which is going to weigh up a lot heavier. So things like that, there's a lot of nuance there that's where you're going to have to get more technical and a little more mathy with all those little factors that come into play. I see a little spider over there. I'm just going to let it do its thing. Okay, next question. I've been participating in Farmer's Daughter Fiber Sock Squad this year. I'm really enjoying it and now have a lot of partial skeins of fingering weight yarn and some unused mini skeins. Do you have any pattern recommendations for using up these or other scraps? They don't have to be socks. I do. So the one I will mention right out the gate, which is probably over there somewhere, it's right there, is the Embrace Cowl, which I was wearing last week. So sorry, y'all are just getting repeats this week. So this would be a great one for stash diving, little odds and ends. So this was actually designed to use mini skeins. And while I did a fade effect, you could try and make a gradient out of your odds and ends. You could also do purposeful stripes to use up those odds and ends. And I would just weigh out in there in the details. It tells you the yardage, but also just the weight of how much you need. So if you have a bunch of little odds and ends hanging out and you have a kitchen scale, you can find really inexpensive kitchen scales from like $10 to $20 online at Target. And they're very useful for both the kitchen and the studio. But you could just weigh out and make sure you have enough of each color, or maybe you have double, so you only need half the amount of colors and you could do stripes or a fade or something like that. But other great uses, totally missed. Excuse me. Other great uses are mosaic or color work. So things like a yoke sweater, the shift cowl, you could use it for the color work, like for all the little blips, and then just do a solid background. Color work hats, I mean, all kinds of things. Those odds and ends can very much come in handy. Sometimes if it's a yarn base I know I'll use again and I am playing around with stitch patterns, I'll use odds and ends for my swatching, just to play with things, see if there's a stitch pattern I'm gonna like. But yeah, project wise, I recommend the Embrace Cowl. I'll link that down below, but any fun project with color work in it is always a great use for those as well. I was wondering how you do your yarn organization on the steeking stitch column when you're going across those stitches to the other side. Does the color work yarn stay on the side and get picked up later? Does it follow the column down like with the shifty or stone crop? Do you take the color work yarn across even with the MC rows? So the way I think about it, I think we can hopefully simplify this a little bit, where try to think of your steek column just like the rest of the color work you're working. Just follow that chart. If the chart doesn't show you using, because there should be a steek chart, it might be with your big color work chart, it might be a little separate little chart, but if it doesn't show you using both colors, then just leave your contrast color where it is and work around with only your main color. If it does show both, then you would carry both. But you don't need to do anything special with the steek column that the pattern is not telling you. So there's no like extraneous information you should need there. It just follow that chart just like you would any other color work. All right, and by the way, on the non-color work rows, when you are just working like an MC round, yes, I just leave it there and then I would carry it up to the next one and work as I'm supposed to. All right, this is another color work question. I'm trying to learn quicker knitting techniques and wondered if you have tried a yarn tension ring. I think that's what it's called. It holds the yarn higher to pick it up. Thanks. So you know what's interesting is now that I'm reading this, you might just be talking about using that in general, where I've only ever seen them used for color work. but I've never thought about if somebody would use it just to help tensioning. So that's really interesting. I don't know if that's how you meant it or not, but I'm like, oh, I wonder if anybody does use that just for help with tensioning. I've only ever seen them used for color work, and usually they have a few holes for your different strands of yarn, your different colors. And I have never tried them, and I've always been curious. There is a shop that I've seen sell them, and anytime I've gone, they've always been sold out. But yeah, I would be so curious if anybody else tuning in has any practice. Is that the word I want to use? I don't even know. What is the word? Oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Experience? Coffee's not doing its job. If anybody here has any experience with a tensioning ring in different ways, different reasons you might want to use it, if there are other reasons besides color work, I would so love to know. So feel free to throw that in the comments. Sorry, I can't be of much help with your actual question because I have never used one, but they always look fun. I do pretty much all of my stranded color work. I use two hands. So I have never had a reason to try too hard to get a tensioning ring because of the fact that I'm like, well, I do hold them in different hands. But anytime I've seen somebody post a little video of using theirs, it just looks really fun, and I like to try new things. So yeah, I would be so curious if there's anyone here who's had experience, who loves it or doesn't love us. Tell us everything. Okay. Let's start the knit along, and then I'll jump into my show and tell. So Rachel from Wool and Spinning, who, as many of you know, is like one of my heroes. I do not understand how this woman gets all of this spinning and making done. She is prolific and such a generous sharer of her knowledge. So I have taken, I think, like every class that she offers on School of Sweet Georgia, and am always left so inspired. So when she emailed me and said that she has a Patreon, and her Patreon group was chatting, and somebody there had already spun and knit the Attune shawl and really enjoyed it. And so she had contacted me about doing a spin along, knit along. And the Weekender Spin It to Knit It, knit along ends this month, which I am actually going to finish in time. I, a couple times, had given up and was just like, there's no way I'm going to get this done. But I got my butt into gear this month, and I only have like 3/4 of a sleeve in the collar to go. So I'm very excited. I will show that before this is over. So it was perfect timing. And basically the goal for this is to spin and knit for the Attune shawl. So here is my handspun version, which was the first version I knit of this shawl. So this shawl is actually half brioche and half fisherman's rib. So I'm gonna, and for me, it was just a little study in these two fabrics, which are so similar, and kind of playing around with them in this one shawl. And this one is all my handspun. I used a big old mix of fiber from Hedgehog Fibers Club. I had a whole bunch of their fiber. If you dig back in these episodes, you'll see I showed it quite a bit. I basically divided it into 2 different color groups and then spun them separately. And so this was one giant skein that I got, and that, like, there's even some sparkle in here. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. And then with it, I paired it with actually just a neutral marled undyed cormo that came, one was just like a cream, like a white, and the other was beige. And I just spun them separately and plied them together. So it's just a 2-ply, really delicate marl. I mean, looking at it knit up, you can barely see the marl. They're quite close in color. But this is my hand spun one. So this is what we are doing for the Spin It to Knit along. And then I did also do a commercial version using a Wing and a Prayer Farm and Spin Cycle yarns, because I know not all of you spin. I hope that I will continue to influence you all to spin, but I know not everyone has the interest or maybe the time to do it. So this is what it looks like knit up in commercial yarns. And as I said, the goal is definitely to spin for this shawl. We purposely lined it up with Tour de Fleece for that reason. So Tour de Fleece is coming in less than a month. It's in like 2 weeks. So that'll be kicking off. So this is kind of perfect time to align your project with that. If you did want to spin for it during Tour de Fleece, then knit it. And it's going to end September 15th is the end of the knit along. And Rachel and I gathered some prizes and everything for you. The forum for this knit along is on Ravelry in Rachel's group, which is Woolen Spinning. If you're a member of my group, you'll actually see I started a thread that links to her group so you could easily find it. It was also in my newsletter this week, and I'll reshare some of that info in next week's newsletter, which is going to be, so there's also a sale for the pattern if you do want to jump in. The code was shared in this past week's newsletter. It ends this coming Tuesday, the sale does, and I will share that code one last time. So if you're not a subscriber yet, this would be a great time to subscribe to my newsletter, and I'll kind of re-put some of this information in, but I'll link it down below too so that you can find the knit along forum. There's a hashtag for Instagram. It is spin to knit Attune, which is the name of the shawl. So yeah, I will put all that below. You can join if you are not a spinner and use commercial yarn. We're just hoping that all of y'all spinners will use your hand spun for at least one of the yarns. You can pair it with a commercial yarn. It is a decent amount of yardage. The nice thing too, though, with that shawl, it's really flexible on weight and size. So for instance, my hand spun one, I think ended up being a light fingering and a sport that I combined. And then the commercial one is a DK and a sport. So you can really play, even if you're a newer spinner and your yarn's not very consistent, it is a really hand spun friendly shawl. You can really kind of fudge some of the yarn weight factors in there. And if it's inconsistent, that's totally okay. So there we go. That is that new knit along. So it technically is going to kick off on June 15th, but you can already go to the forum. There's already tons of people in there chatting. So feel free to head on over and jump in through the link that I'll put below. And now let's do some show and tell. Oh, I also will link to Rachel's video because she chatted about the knit along during her Patreon this week, which is now live on YouTube. So you can catch it there even if you aren't a member of her Patreon. And it's full of all other kind of fun spinning information. So I have been spinning up a storm. It was Maine Fiber Frolic here last weekend. And I'm like, is that how long ago it was? And I picked up this lovely, you're not even probably going to be able to see the color nuance, but it is this Romney alpaca. I posted a picture. Sometimes I try to like, oh, there, now you can see it. I posted a picture on Instagram too, so you can really see the nuance. You can see all those, it's like these deep, moody blues. And it is from, oh man, Farm Friendly Fiber. I tagged him on Instagram. So if you want to see the actual fiber artist, look on Instagram because I tagged them there. They do have an Etsy shop. It's on break right now, but the fiber's been delightful. So I decided I had two like 2-ounce bumps and I just split it into 3 so that I could do 3 singles, and I'm going to apply that for some sock yarn. I'm really excited. So that I'm hoping to apply today if I have time. Then my good friend Mel, who also taught me how to do woolen spinning, she teaches a class at Port Fiber sometimes for woolen long draw, and is just an amazing spinner and weaver. And she taught me how to use a drop spindle, which was so nice because I realized that I'm going to be traveling. Share this. I'm going to be traveling. I talked about how I wanted to learn drop spindle because during Tour de Fleece, I will be traveling internationally for a little bit. So Mel was so nice and gave me a quickie little lesson. And I cannot believe how much I enjoy it. I don't know you know, I think sometimes we just get set in our ways. But so this is a prime example of when I say that I'm not really interested in something, and then a week later, I eat my words. We were spinning, a couple of my friends, and I was like, no, I just don't really have any interest in spindle spinning. I've got a couple wheels. I love spinning on my wheels. And then I was like, dang, I need something more portable. Even my little e-spinner, I was worried about bringing it overseas, traveling with it. I don't know, I was just worried about something happening to it. So anyways, of course, a week later, I literally texted Mel and was like, can you tell me more about spindle spinning? But I mean, I took it, my kids had a little fun run at school the other day, and it's each grade. So while the other grades were running, I was just spinning away. Oh my goodness. It is so much fun. It's like walking and knitting, but now I can walk and spin. I'm just so tickled. So anyways, this is my first little, I'm trying to decide, I'm like, is that cop? So this is called a cop, what your fiber all loading up onto your spindle. And I'm like, is this when I need to wind it off? So I'm still very much learning, but I'm really loving it. Now I want to know all the things about spindle spinning. I got the book Respect the Spindle. So that's been fun to read every night before I go to bed. So that is my other spinning project besides my sock yarn I'm working on. But that's not all, folks. I also, this is a bobbin I really need to ply. This is the most amazing bat. I love all the colors in it. And this is from Crux Fibers. And I love this bat so much that I spun the whole thing. It was actually my first project on my flat iron from Shacked. And I haven't decided what I want to do with it. I think in my head I was thinking I would do a combo spin for it. Oh, that just reminds me. That question earlier, they talked about extending yardage with a combo spin, and I forgot to talk about that. That is one of my favorite things to do. I love when I have a really beautiful braid. Maybe it's a one-off braid from a fiber club that I just love, but I only have the one braid and I really want to stretch that yardage. Combo spins are the way to go. I love doing combo spins. I will do a 2 to a 3 ply. I love to throw a bat in the mix. So a lot of times I'll pick 1 or 2 braids and then a bat, and I'll do a ply from each and do a 3 ply yarn. And it's amazing how much yardage you'll get out of it. Whew, almost spilled my coffee. We're okay. So this is a combo spin. This is what I used in my rad plaid cowl. Do you see how much I have left? That was a massive skein. I think it ended up being like 900 yards. So I have a ton left. I'm like, what else am I going to use this in? I used it for a whole cowl, and now I think I'm going to do a Harlow hat, and I'll still have some left over. So I really, really adore doing that, especially if you're somebody who has that tendency to either join fiber clubs or to buy the one-off braids from a fiber festival. It's such a great way to extend that yardage and use it for bigger projects. You know, generally speaking, I do knit a ton of socks, and I have been on a cowl kick, but a lot of times I default to sweaters. I actually was having a little conversation with myself the other day, like, Andrea, you've got to knit something besides sweaters, because I just have been one sweater after the next, which then you always need more yardage. So it's a great way to stretch it. So anyways, I am trying to decide if I'm going to go through my fiber stash and see if I have any braids that I would like with this to possibly do a combo spin with it. But I love it so much that I might even just center ball this, center pole ball. Is that what I want to say? And do a 2-ply with it. And maybe, I was thinking kind of like some cute little mitts or something. I don't know. But it has been waiting to be finished for a long time, like a year. So anyways, that's been on my mind. And then during the DRK, during the current weekender Spin It to Knit Along, this was one of my first things I spun up for it, was this very bright, this is called Lightning Bug. It is from Wound Up Fiber Arts in Michigan. Love her colorways. This is very bright for her, but I just think it's so fun, especially for like summertime. I don't know. I love it. So I was going to do my weekender with this originally, and then I was like, I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it. So I only did the one skein, but I have a sweater's quantity of the fiber, and I ended up doing my bats, which y'all saw on here in previous episodes, which I still didn't use for my weekender. Spun like 3 different yarns for that sweater. So now I'm back at it because my plan, and I'm kind of hoping some of y'all might want to join me, is I'm going to do a traveler hoodie with this yarn. Don't you think? Like summertime, cute little cropped hoodie. Come on. I just picture being back in Michigan on the sand dunes when it's a little chilly out and you're all kind of tired and sun drenched. And so you're a little chilly and you gotta pull on your hoodie, and it's gonna be this. It's gonna be the traveler hoodie in this color. So I would love to hear if anybody else wants to join me in that, because I might kick that off as another spin it to knit it, knit along. So, but I'm about halfway through this one. I've got 3 braids left to do. So I'll end up with 5-ish. Yeah, it'll be about 5 of these pretty beefy skeins here, which should be plenty for that sweatshirt. So anyways, that is chugging along. And then I'm also doing a long draw woolen CVM spin that I have been working on for over a year. The single undyed natural spins, I always want to do a sweaters quantity and they take me forever because I get bored and I'm like, I gotta get some color in my life. And I'll get distracted with a braid spin and I gotta finish it. I have like 2 bags left and now I'm afraid that it's gonna be so inconsistent because I'm still honing the woolen long draw skills. So I'm like, I just got to get this done. I can't keep taking these big long breaks because who knows what I'm even spinning at this point. And so let's full circle it. So I'm also really want to get that done because I'm currently knitting with my precious first CVM big old sweater spin that also took me at least a year to do. And that is what I'm knitting my weekender out of. So I am getting close to being done here. Here is a sleeve. I gotta finish this sleeve. I'm purposely not showing you the front because I made some changes and I can't wait to finish it. I think it's gonna be really good. And then I'll show y'all. So anyways, this is, and it's just been so amazing knitting with this yarn. I just love knitting with my handspun. It's so magical. Okay. Anyways, I could wax poetic all day long about handspun yarn. So this is a long one. I just went on a handspun tangent and like, look at my little cowl. It's so pretty. Okay, I'm gonna be done now. I think that's all the things. Looking around, did I miss any of my show and tells? No, but I just made an even bigger mess. Like I just threw all that around me. So I'm gonna go clean my studio, unfortunately. What I'd rather do is ply this sock yarn. Maybe if I clean real quick, I can do that too. So I hope that y'all have a great weekend. Maybe it'll involve some spinning. If it does, and you post a photo, tag me in it so I can see it. Because I would just love to soak up all the handspun love that is out there. If you're knitting, especially if you're knitting one of my patterns, I would also love to see it. So make sure you tag me on those too. And I hope y'all have a great weekend. Thanks so much for spending some time with me, and I hope to see you back here next week. Don't forget to sign up for that newsletter if you want to score a little discount on the Attune shawl. It is a bigger discount than usual, so just a little added whatever push. All right, bye everybody.